Welcome to another episode on Inspiration Unleashed. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my own personal QHHT experience. If you've never heard of this, it stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. It was coined by the late and great Dolores Cannon as a way for people to connect to their higher self and their subconscious mind. So what the QHHT practitioner does is puts you into the theta brainwave state. It's that state just before you go to sleep or just as you're waking up. And that gives you access to the higher self and the subconscious mind and whatever other aspects want or need to come through. So they guide you through the process. They ask questions. And I had like 1.5 pages of questions that I wanted to ask. So we didn't go through all of them, but it was quite the experience. And one of the things that came through was to share my story and share my experience with others. So what better way than to make a video about it? So I did this a few weeks ago at the timing of this recording and finally just getting around to re-listening to it a few times, making notes and share the bullet points with anyone listening. So all in all, my particular session, I was in the office for, I believe it was about 6 hours. So longer than expected, but it was really neat. It starts by sitting down with the practitioner and it's a simple talk. You go through your life history, your work, your health, just those general topics, what you want to talk about. That lasts a couple of hours before jumping into the actual QHHT session. And for myself, this lasted almost 2.5 hours, which was pretty crazy because when I came out of it, I felt like I remembered most of the conversation, but then they asked how long that felt, and I thought about it, and really I was like, I don't know if that was half an hour or an hour. And the practitioner said, well, it was almost 2.5 hours. So that in itself blew my mind. And like I said, I still was able to remember some of the questions and some of the pictures and memories that came out of it. And I still can to this day. And in saying that, some of the things I remember saying, I still couldn't quite articulate it very well. So even now, re-listening and thinking about it, I'm getting new understandings of what came through. So it's really, really interesting to sort of dive into that. And it starts off with exploring past lives, or if everything's happening simultaneously, so tapping into these other lives. And it's really neat because it starts off and you're thinking, I don't understand the point of this story or this vision. But then it all got tied in at the end. So that was really neat as well when all of these aha moments started and you're like, oh, now it makes sense as to why I was shown this. So that's a quick overview of the process. So I'll go into a little bit without giving away too many details about what actually came through. And like I said, the main thing being here was to share the story. And I mean, I think everyone should be doing something like this at least once in their life and get any of those pressing questions answered that I think everyone as a human has, unless you're truly tapped in, which of course very few of us are. So the first vision that came through was me as a young, scared boy in a small village, a very damp, dirty, dreary type of place. I can only assume it was somewhere in the UK, just based on the landscape and the situation and everything. Everyone's just trying to survive. We've got some houses, but not houses like we know. I'm talking like these are huts made of sticks and some natural roofing of wood and mud and leaves and that kind of stuff. So nothing fancy. They were just slightly raised off the ground. The house each was one room, a bed, and a fireplace used for heat and cooking. But the one thing I noticed, it was just women and children. There were no men. So it later came through that pretty much all the men had gone off and were killed, whether it was a war or battle or something else. We have no idea, but we were just left to our own, just trying to survive. Then as a kid, I mostly just kept to myself, tried to stay out of trouble. And then later in my teenager years, I decided enough was enough. Obviously, the fathers aren't coming back. And so I rounded up everyone I could who wanted to come, and we were set off to find new land, a new home, because it was just too much misery in this location, too much sadness. So pretty much all of the older women stayed behind. They were stuck in their own ways. They wanted to sit and suffer. That was it. So essentially, all the kids took off, and we walked for quite a while before we made our way to the coastline where we set up a new village, which then I was the leader of from until the very end of my life. And there's some little things that came through. We had people trying to come and take what we established. We're doing well. We were a peaceful fishing village essentially, and it was my life. It was my family that I took care of. So I ended up passing away at a fairly old age, natural causes, nothing crazy. It was peaceful, but I didn't want to leave, right? Because this was my home, my village that I had helped to establish, and it was growing and thriving. And then the second past life that came through was me as a young boy in what I can only assume is Egypt. I remember seeing a giant pyramid. It was shining bright, gold cap at the top, lots of greenery, very lush. And we were actually outside playing recess. And I remember seeing this figure in the back. Couldn't really tell, who or what it was, but it's so strange to describe these visions because when I close my eyes, all I see is black. So this is all happening in my mind's eye, or the third eye, I guess, as some people call it. And so it's trying to focus and move things around this vision that's coming through. So it's quite interesting. It's really hard to describe. But then the practitioner was asking questions, trying to figure out, again, why this vision? Why am I just a boy running around playing, right? So then they started to take me in this direction. What was I doing? I realized I was at recess. Yes, the teacher's watching. So I went to the teacher. We ended up going into this classroom. I realized the teacher was male, very dark skin, like black as black can be. And he also had like bright blue piercing eyes. And I could tell that he was an old soul, an ancient soul, very wise, very patient with us kids, but just full of wisdom and knowledge. He walked around, he had this large staff that he carried with him at all times. And what came through was he was giving sort of an Arcturian feeling. So the thought was, of course, this was an Arcturian soul incarnated into a human body to teach us in these schools. So we sat on the floor and we were learning math, astronomy. I remember seeing sort of like star charts on the wall, which is quite interesting. And this is very early days of school, just with the age. The whole idea was to discover kids' natural talents and their interests before they would move on to whichever schools and mentorship to enhance those skills, to master the skills that they wanted to or were naturally gifted at. So this was really quite interesting to see. And it's really funny. It's complete opposite of our school systems now, where it's created to try and fit everyone into one single box. And it's make or break if you do it or you don't, right? And so, which obviously in today's age, a lot of people are getting fed up with because it's only made for the select few to actually succeed rather than everyone succeed. But that's just my personal opinion, but there's proof of that everywhere. So then it turned to the practitioner wanting to talk to this teacher because it came through that obviously him and I had a very strong connection. I had a lot of respect for this man and what he was teaching at. And it sounded like I wasn't the best student because I couldn't focus, which is really funny because nothing's really changed. And I wanted to do everything. And it was kind of like, that's great, but also find your path. So anyway, so we started to speak with this teacher, which came through that I personally have a strong connection to the Pleiades, which was quite interesting. Because again, going down the spiritual route, I hear about, the Arcturians, the Pleiades, Syrians, Lyrians, Andromedans, Orion, like you hear about it all, right? But I've never really thought about it. So that was quite interesting to come through. And then what also came through was part of this schooling was him and what I can assume are the leaders knew that eventually all of this wisdom, this knowledge would be lost. So they're trying to hurry up and get this knowledge into us, knowing it wouldn't last forever. And there would be a time we would all come back and have to remember everything that was lost. And as a young kid, you don't understand it because why would anything change, right? Still the same belief today. The world's always been like this. It hasn't changed, which is just not true at all. So again, the knowledge that came through for me personally was not just to listen to things, but truly feel things, have a feel for it, a knowing, and to really slow down, pause, take a breath, meditate, and get out in nature. That came through several times. They're like, if there's just one thing you can do is to get out in nature, meditate, bare feet on the ground, sit under a tree, whatever you can do, right? Go swimming, that kind of thing. So I think it was about 3 or 4 times that this actually came up in the conversations with my higher self and this teacher and everything else that came along afterwards. So, which I think is the case for pretty much every human on earth at this point. Just get outside, away from technology, meditate, do the inner work, connect with nature. Really doesn't get any more simpler than that. So that came through, and that's kind of something I already know anyways, but it was a good reminder to actually go and do it. And there were some other things. There's some physical feelings that came through as well, being handed things which I didn't expect. But again, it was quite interesting to have that sort of physical feeling come through this session. I got some advice on some foods, which again, we all know this, focus on organic veggies and fruits, make them into a smoothie, have fun with it, eat less meat. If you're going to eat meat, don't get it from the grocery store. Get it from a trusted source. So it's not full of junk and whatever they inject in this meat, right? Things we all know. Stay away from processed foods, that kind of stuff. Then a few things came through with stuff that I've always had with like irrational fears of certain things. We tried to clear that out, balance the chakras, and why I had certain things, why I didn't. And yeah, it really came up to more silence in the life, relax, meditate. Why I'm making this video, sharing this was to be more vulnerable, to open up, mistakes, failures, everything's okay. It's all part of the game. So there's no stress, right? Or rather, there doesn't have to be. These types of channels, you're going to get negative comments, people who believe you, people who don't, but it's all good because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Everyone knows their own truth. Everyone's on their own spiritual journey, and that's totally okay. So going back to that original story, what then came through, like with everyone, the question is, why am I here? What's my purpose? What's the point of any of this? So that first story was to show me that literally from nothing, you're living in the crap, and you're able to go from nothing and become a leader. Start fresh, start that new community, and be that leader of community, and people will be better off. The people who want to join you, they'll come. The people that don't, it's no problem. They're going to go and do their own thing. It's totally okay. You want to wake up as many people as possible, but you're not going to get them all. It's impossible. So I think that was one of the biggest things that came through this is I am a natural born leader, but now it's like, well, what am I going to do with it? Because at least in this lifetime, it's sort of, put the head down, do your work, follow, don't lead, and you'll be okay. Just fit in. That's sort of the mentality. And much more came through. I had some other guides came through. A connection to Archangel Gabriel came through as well. An ancestor came through who's been apparently knocking at the door for quite some time. So it's just things like that, and some more personal questions that were answered through this QHHT session. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I think everyone should do this. Now, it may be different if you believe in this kind of stuff or not, because I'm guessing with the subconscious and the higher self, you still may have your biases on this kind of thing. Like if I had no desire to know about, ET life, ancient history, and that kind of thing, would that still have come through? I have no idea. But again, it's one of those things, you're not going to do this if you're not that open minded and sort of on this spiritual path, anyways. And the information that comes through is always going to be the best information for you at that specific time. I'm sure if I do this again in a few years, it's going to be completely different information that comes out. So there's the bullet points of my own personal QHHT session. At the end of the day, as I already mentioned, it came down to just focus, quiet the mind, meditate, relax, eat right and exercise, do the work, accept love as much as you give it out, go outside, smile at the world around you. It's an amazing world if you let it be, and everything you're looking for will come. And that was sort of the final message that came through. I truly hope this has inspired you to have your own QHHT session done. I'm not affiliated with them by any means, but I'm just super happy with what came through. I know a lot of other people who have had great success just based on online testimonials, no one personally. So I'm going to leave a link below to the website. You can check it out, read into it. There's lots of videos on YouTube about other practitioners as well, sharing some of their patient stories. And on the website, you can find a practitioner that's local to you, of course, if there's anyone around. So definitely check it out. But something like this, a past life regression, a lot of people doing the plant medicine thing right now. I mean, they always have been, but I see a lot more talk about it online. I don't have any interest in doing that kind of stuff. I'd rather do it all internally and access the realms through a more natural, holistic state, I'll call it. But according to the people doing their plant medicine journeys, they've had amazing breakthroughs through that. So there's really no one true answer, one simple way to do this sort of work. There's multiple ways to do this. And as long as you're doing it from the heart, then you're going to be all right and you're going to get the answers you're looking for. Doing these types of sessions are just to sort of ramp up that activity and knowledge to kickstart the next step, because it is a constant evolution of consciousness. We hear people talking about enlightenment and that kind of thing, but enlightenment is an ongoing journey. If anyone says they're enlightened, they are not enlightened. That's the irony of it. So be mindful, be careful of those types of people saying you have to do it this way. If you want to be enlightened, you have to do this type of yoga. You have to do this meditation. As soon as I hear anyone tell me I have to do something, I'm out. We are free, sovereign beings. We don't have to do anything, especially when it comes to our own spiritual journey. It's ours and ours alone. We can ask for the guidance, we can ask for the help, but we don't have to follow a certain procedure. So keep that in mind as you go down all these various rabbit holes like I've been doing. Anyways, thanks again so much for listening to this video if you've made it this far, and I will see you on the next one.